Welcome to Mastering Success Podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies, the habits of high achievers. I'm your host, Jeremy Sanford, keynote speaker and business growth consultant, and I'm on a mission to help you to unlock your full potential. Each episode, we bring you powerful conversations with experts, leaders, and game changers who've mastered success in their respective field. Last episode, we talked about the cost of being too nice. So when you get a chance, go check out that episode. But let's get straight to it. Ladies and gentlemen, today on Mastering Success, we got a straight up force in the world of leadership, customer service, and operational excellence. This man has spent over a decade driving results at the highest level, from delivering thousands of trainings and driving some serious revenue while building systems that actually scale. He's a guy that organizations call when things get messy. And when the pressure's on and there's no playbook, he comes in the clutch time after time like Kobe. Hashtag Mamba mentality. We're talking about a leader, a strategist, and someone who knows how to turn chaos into clarity. But most of all, what I admire about this guy is that he has things beyond success from a corporate perspective. He's a devoted father, a family man, and someone who understands what really matters. And so if you're serious about leadership, scaling, and building something that lasts, this podcast is for you. So without further ado, y'all help me to welcome to the Mastering Success Podcast, the one, the only, Phillip Greer. How are you?
Hey, man, I appreciate that. I am doing well, and I am honored to be here. I just listened to everything that you said about me, and I am like, oh, yeah, I guess I did do those things. It really helps you to remember what you did. But I am just so grateful that we have the opportunity to have a conversation about this. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. So when we talk about mastering success, you have done a lot. You have accomplished a lot. So when we talk about success, what does that look like for you?
You know, success is constantly evolving and growing and never getting stuck. I think people get this vision in their mind. Like even when I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to have a six-figure job. I want to have 2.5 kids. I want to live in a house with a rope swing in the front, and then I'll feel successful. And I think as you evolve and you get older, you realize that success is every day winning that day. Every day I wake up, I
Right.
show up, I give it my all, and I make sure that when I leave that day or I close that chapter, I feel good about what I put forth. And if I don't, I take those lessons and learnings into the next day. Success
I
is
like
an
that.
ongoing evolution for me. It's not the end of the track. It's making sure that there are more tracks to go down. And so when I look back on those things and I think about success in my job, in my house, with my family, with the people in my community, it's like, did I give all of what Philip had to offer that day, that week, that month? That's how I feel successful. For me, the things that have made me feel less successful over time are days where I kind of phoned it in, or I just did it halfway, or I wasn't feeling it. And I keep those feelings because they help me remember what I'm aiming for. They help me remember my North Star and push towards those successful moments.
I like that. I like that a lot. You know, it just reminds me of how important it is to put in your daily deposits. And I have a coach. I have a couple of coaches, and they oftentimes tell me that consistency is much more important than intensity. So, you know, you'll have times where you can go hard at the gym, but it's the person that is consistent every single day that'll get much further. So I like what you said. It seems like you have really mastered leadership on a high level. And that's something that I want to learn about. I'm working on a book about leadership. If you were to write a book about leadership, what would you say is considered to be a good leader, and what makes a leader that's maybe a bad leader and not so good of a leader?
I think the people get caught up in qualifications. Am I
Okay.
qualified? Did I go to college? Did I take this leadership class? Do I understand the things that somebody else has told me are important? And I think that those things are a facet of it. But the most important part of leadership is knowing your audience and what they need. I did
Okay.
stand up comedy for a short amount of time. And I remember I did this one set and it bombed. And I did the same set a week later and it absolutely crushed the audience. They thought it was hilarious. The difference was the people. The
Okay.
people are what you have to be able to adapt to. And so often I feel like we have leaders that we've encountered, and what we remember them by is, did they connect with me, or were they connected with, let's say, the company, for instance? So did they follow the company line and do everything the company wanted? That could be good for the company, but for me to develop and see them as a true leader, they have to blend those two. The company has goals. The end, whatever you're working for or towards, has a goal in mind, but it's the people that get you there. So
Okay.
for me, since I've become a people leader, I've always felt like it shouldn't change that much from how you interact with people on a daily day basis. Like, I will lead from within amongst my team when I was an individual contributor, when I'm here with my family, when I'm like my extended family and my immediate family. They all have needs. I think about those when I'm talking to them. I change my words as I have an interaction. I change the things that I offer up. You look at, I've got three siblings, two older, one younger. If you were to ask any of them if I treat them differently based on their age, the answer is no. But if you were to ask them if I understand who they are and what they might need out of a conversation with me, they'll say yes. They may think it's funny. They may think it's serious. They may think it's one of those like kicks in the butt that they need at that moment. But when they're talking to me, I'm listening to what they're saying. I'm interpreting what they're asking for without using the specific question, and then I'm delivering that back to them. So for everybody to be an effective leader, that listening is where it begins. And I talk a lot. Like, Jeremy, you can ask anybody, I will yap their ears off. But it's those moments where you remember to say, let me slow down. Let me hear what this person is saying and treat them like they matter, because they do. And if you start with that, you will always be successful. An example that I have, my favorite
Mm-hmm.
leader to date is this gentleman named Chris. And we could not be more different, right? He works on a farm growing up. He's a Caucasian man from Tennessee. We have on paper big differences. But from the moment that I interviewed with this man, he understood. He asked me where I was from. He asked me what I did. He asked me what my dreams were. And then as we went through the 3 years of working together, he remembered them. He would talk to me about them. He would talk to me about my son, who was at the time yet to be born, now is 7. He still asks about me when I connect with him, and we do not work together. And if I were going to burn the house down for a leader, it would be him, because he knew me, he knows me, and he's always going to continue that learning process. Take that in juxtaposition to a leader who is focused on getting the most out of me every day when I show up to work, monitoring my tasks and emails, yada, yada, yada down the line. And this is a leader that I had in the recent past. It causes this feeling inside that you're just being hosed. You're feeling like you're questioning everything. You can't blindly follow somebody because they don't have your best intentions in mind. They don't have what's good for you and your family, and you can't trust that. So that listening leads to the trust, which leads to a lifelong leadership flow and makes you want to do what that person did for you to other people. So I know I said a lot there, but if we look back at what a good leader is, do I want to be a leader like that person, is something I ask. Because I may be good at a lot of things, but there's always more for me to learn. But I can always look back at my favorite leaders and say, this is a person who inspired me and made me feel seen and heard. And I want to make other people feel that way. We don't want to be the leader that makes people feel the way we hated when we worked for them or lived with them or were under them. Those things, I think if you really take a second, pause, close your eyes, think about who made you feel good versus who didn't, you will remember those traits and you will try and put those things into practice. And it could be across any industry. It could be across anything that you're doing. It could be your parents. You just remember the people who, when you look in their eyes, you know they see you and hear you and they care about what happens.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. A quick pause, because this might be exactly what you need to hear. Most CEOs don't have a revenue problem. They have a communication problem. If you're a leader and you're carrying the vision, making high stakes decisions and managing growth, but you know that you're still leaving the money on the table because your message is not landing to investors, to partners, or even decision makers. What I do is I help CEOs communicate with clarity and authority to scale their businesses and to position themselves to win big opportunities. We know that government contracts is one of the largest, most overlooked growth opportunities available. If you're ready to stop grinding and start scaling, let's talk. You can reach me at jeremy@jeremysanford.com via email, or you can find me on my website, jeremysanford.com. Now, let's get back to the podcast. I love how you really brought together leadership and communication, because when it comes to leadership, you have to be a good communicator. And if you're not a good communicator, that must be a skill set that you're trying to develop to become better. When we talk about mastering success, none of us have reached the peak of what our capabilities are. We're constantly working to improve that. And I also like how you talked about, the fact that real leaders are concerned. And I think that that is so very important. Let's kind of take a step further from that particular question. If you were to go back 15 years and you were to talk to Phillip and you were
Wow.
mentoring him on how to, be a good leader, the people that's going to be listening to this podcast are also maybe people in their, mid 20s, trying to climb the ladder. What would you say to a younger Phillip, and also to maybe some of our upcoming leaders that aspire to get to maybe where you are, or to be the best version of the leader that they know they're capable of becoming?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm going to tell my age here, but if I were to go back that many years, I'm like 24. I'm driving a bleach rig down in Atlanta. I've got a CDL. I'm making $13 an hour plus overtime. I'm hot stuff to myself, right? Like I got it all figured out. Nobody can say anything to me. And I'm always going out with my friends and I'm performative. I'm always talking. I'm trying to be the center of attention and I'm trying. I think I would tell myself, breathe more during a conversation. Slow down what you're saying and open your ears. At least a 1-to-1 ratio of how often you're talking to how often you're listening. And don't be afraid to be wrong. Because in the grand scheme of things, as I've aged, nobody really remembers whether Phillip thought he was really cool or super successful or fun or any of those things. They remember sometimes the jokes that I told, the way that I made them feel, those pieces. But if I had slowed down and taken more of those moments in to learn from them, I would be even further ahead. So I would give that advice. Hey, man, yes, it all feels super big and heavy right now because that's your life. But also realize that there are all these other lives being lived around you that you can glean something from. Slow down, take a breath, listen to the person in front of you, listen to the person next to you, even if you don't like them. I think one of the things that we suffer from right now in our current state, we have a lot of leaders at a federal level, state level, in a leadership role in companies who are so into their own mindset being correct that they can't see what's around them. And that trickles down to other people who listen. So you think about the constant like news cycle that we're in, where it's very combative. We go, you're one side or the other. You have to listen to something. You have to have an argument with something, etc. And we get entrenched in it. If we would slow down, do a 1-to-1 listening to talking, we would find common ground. We'd be able to get along. We'd find a way to take care of our neighbors. And we just miss that right now. So tell 24-year-old Phillip, breathe, bro. Don't take yourself that seriously. Listen to everybody else. You're still going to get to where you're going. You will just have balance sooner. And that balance is what can power you, because other people around you are going to continue to follow you. They're going to continue to want to be in your presence, but you will be even further ahead when you give instructions, advice, talk to them, listen to what they're saying later, and that will help you down the road.
Fantastic. I love it. You've built some tremendous systems over the years that have helped, organizations to scale. When you look at building systems, what is more important, the system or the people inside it? Or would you say that it's a 50-50 thing?
Yeah, it's not 50-50. I'm going to say 70-30, people first, because you can have a bad system and people will overachieve for the mission that you've put out there and you can make it work. You can have a great system and nobody follows you. And guess what? You got a great system that you can't run because people don't want to be involved. So
Yeah.
people are 70%. By the same token, the faith that people put into you to be a leader means that you have to have some kind of system laid out that they can replicate, follow, and know their end result before they start. You think about how often companies fail or have struggles or go through layoffs, a lot of it is because they say, trust us. We are going to lead you to the path that needs to be achieved, but they have no track record of doing that. They have not developed any of that trust. They haven't made you feel like you matter to a certain extent. They may have the best system, right? I've got the best car, but nobody trusts me because they haven't seen it drive around. They're not interested. So 70% is people, 30% is here's where it's going, here's my track record, here's what we're going to do together. And the other thing that I've noticed as a leader now, and we go through changes on a regular basis, right? We're in a SaaS environment. We're constantly bobbing and weaving to keep up. We've got AI coming in. You've got products that aren't going to be there forever. You've got to find the thing that fits. If I communicate that to my team before they hear it somewhere else, they are satisfied. And they will ride or die because they feel, oh, I may not know exactly what's changing or what's coming down the pipe, but Phillip will make sure that we get as early of communication as we can and give us the information so we don't have to clog our brain with all of these questions we have over where the company's going, what it's doing, will we be successful? We know that if we show up and we control what we can control, Phillip will have our back and keep us updated. And we used to have this one phrase where we had two leaders. One of them was the guy Chris I mentioned earlier. He's super fun. The other gentleman was this guy named Daniel. Both great leaders in different regards. But we would say Chris could show up and fire you. Daniel could show up and promote you, and you'd be happier to have the conversation with Chris, even though you were getting fired. And the reason is because he would encourage you. He would make you feel like no matter what happens, he has your back. He'll help you find another job. He's had a great time working with you. You know, he knows your kids' names and he cares. The other person, he was just more kind of aggressive, straightforward. His delivery was very like strong and got all his points across, but you didn't feel that connection. Okay. They could have the same system, but you would follow Chris's system before you would follow Daniel's system just because of the feeling that you got out of it. So the people, that investment, far and away the most important part.
Wow, I love it. I was reading your LinkedIn, I was reading some things on the internet concerning you. You have done over 1,200 trainings. That is a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
You've done 1,200 trainings. And when I think about the people that listen to this podcast, it's usually CEOs, entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, and people like that. When we look at doing trainings, what makes a training successful? What makes it where it actually changes behavior? Because I'm sure that maybe early on in your first trainings, maybe they weren't as effective as they are now. So when you look at, your progression and where you are now and what you've learned, what makes a training actually cause people to leave changed and leave motivated to do something different?
You know, that's such a great question. And there's a recurring theme here with connecting with people. But I think back to my earliest trainings, and it was when I was a teacher. So I taught special education in DC. I was not supposed to be a teacher. I moved there to be a politician. And then I met some politicians, and I was like, nope, I don't want anything. I don't want to be like this. So my sister helped me find a job with a lady who was pregnant and had a special education class that needed some protection, right? At like 6, 7 months pregnant, if you have kids who are starting to have episodes or they've got really bad emotional issues, you don't want to risk anything that could happen. So I essentially was a glorified bodyguard. And I would sit there and I would watch these children, and we're trying to teach kindergarten through second grade all in one classroom, children with special needs. They all have a unique requirement. So you look at that teaching, which is what I view training as, what gets that child engaged and bought in? And inside of all of us, no matter how successful we are, no matter how old we get, you get into a car and it goes fast, you feel something, right? You hear a song that really resonates with you, you feel something. You want to tap into that because once they're connected to that song, to that car, anything you're talking about in that moment elicits a reaction out of them and their brain is activated. So when I would look at that and then I became a special education teacher, a lot of them would get written off because they had these emotional issues, they had ADHD, they had these things they were dealing with, and nobody's listening, nobody's following them. But I allowed them to be seen and heard. The same thing I practice in my trainings now. And it can be at scale, it could be one-to-one, didn't matter. A perfect example is when I took over the 3rd through 5th grade class, we were the redhead stepchildren of the school. Nobody listened to us. Nobody talked to us. We started a chess club together. I taught these children how to play chess, and then they were able to teach the rest of the school how to play chess. Now all of a sudden, all of these kids who haven't had anything to live for at school for 7 years, 6 years, depending on their age, now they have people who are looking to them for something. Now they get the opportunity to be a leader. Now they're teaching something. And I can say confidently, because I've run into some of them over time, that they're like, Mr. Phillip, we were so happy that you did this thing for us. So, what did I give those children that somebody else didn't? I just gave them a shot. I just gave them something. I listened to their nobody talks to us, nobody's sitting by us at lunch. And I gave them an option to do that. I take that into my trainings that I go through now. I'm training software. I'm leading a team of people who are activating dealerships into something brand new. Every week we walk in, they've had a sales demo that's been comprehensive. They've gone through these virtual classes, but have they connected with it? And for me, I'm lucky to have the gift of being somewhat funny. Not funny enough to make it a full time career, but funny enough where you're going to remember some of the jokes that you heard. And when I tell those jokes in a class, when I tell them in front of a group of people, then I get the feedback and I feed off of that energy. People are bought in, man. They get locked in and you can see it happening. I call it like this
Yeah.
awakening. You're talking to them, and we've all been in that big room where there's 200 people in those uncomfortable chairs at like a conference center where you're like, oh my God, another one. The person gets on, they start their slide deck, and you're like, put me out of my misery. That is not
Yes.
what I aim for. What I aim
Hmm.
for is before we even get into class, here's my introduction of who I am, what my pedigree is, things that make me tick. And I'm constantly studying the people around me. I'll walk into an F&I manager's office. They got a picture of a dog behind them. Maybe they're sitting next to it. I'm talking about my dog. I'm finding these commonalities between me and them that we can connect to. And then I have a story, usually, that I'm following up on. Or even better, I ask them a question about that dog. What's the name? How long have you had him? Is it your only dog? Tell me more about why you like the dog so much. And people just, they open up. They're like, oh, this dog, this is my wife's dog. It's not even one that I like, but I grew to like him because I had to do the training. Doesn't like this dog food. It's got this rash that it gets when it gets pollen outside. And you're like, pollen, I'm allergic to pollen too. Before you know it, you're deep in this conversation. And as long as you nail the transition, which is, all right, we went over the dog. We can talk about that more later. I asked my wife to send me a picture of our dog, our Tanis. But before we do that, let's get into what this training looks like. They're like, cool. You keep that going. And then by the end of the training, they don't even realize that they've learned a bunch of stuff. You're challenging them during it. You're asking them things. You're throwing in a little bit of comedy or whatever makes you feel comfortable in your presentation style. And then people are eating out of your hand, not because you're manipulating them, but because they've spent so many hours not being heard or listened to. And now they've got a trainer who just comes in and blows it out of the water. I am very fortunate to be in an industry where this has not been mastered yet. People are not going into these trainings as professional teachers or people who can actually activate somebody's mind. So when I walk in with that mindset, people are like, oh, that Phillip guy, he was big, funny, he had good jokes, we talked about food, he cared about my family, and it's genuine. They never forget it. They don't forget it. And it's like I give that out to my team as things that we can discuss. Here's how you connect with a person. Because no matter what you're training, could be the most boring thing, right? I could be teaching you astrophysics in third grade. If I can find some stories, commonalities, a little bit of song in there, talk to you about how it relates to your life, you're bought in and you're listening. And that's what powers that adoption. Um, I really enjoy, I think for me, and it's kind of selfish, I enjoy that moment where I break through. And that breakthrough is where you're like, I did it again. This person's going to see some success with whatever it is that I'm training. And I've trained multiple products across different industries. They're going to see success. They're going to be happy for it. They're probably going to remember me. And when I come back into this dealership, they're going to be like, Bill's back. And that is what drives it. I don't want to leave and be like, I don't ever want to go back to that place again. I want to always feel like I can walk back in there and somebody's going to dap me up and be like, bro, you're not going to believe what happened. Let me tell you about my girlfriend. Or let me tell you about my child who's now in this world and all this stuff. Will you be the godfather? Like all of those experiences are what drive me. And people want to have that connection every day.
Man, that is so powerful. I'm literally taking mental notes because I have a training later on today, and I'm going to incorporate some of the things that you mentioned. even when I think about doing some keynote speeches, you can feel when the breakthrough happens when you're delivering a training or something. You can feel when people kind of come to the edge of their seats. And so that's the part where I'm always looking for early on is how can I connect with them as early as possible so that I can have them for the remainder of the session, the training, or whatever it is. So you articulated that fantastic. So I'm gonna ask two final questions, and these are pretty simple questions. I was looking at all of what you're doing, not just for the company that you work for, but also your family. You have the podcast. It looks like you cook and you do all these different things. You're a man of many hats. You had to build systems within your life in order to manage those. So can you kind of speak to us for a moment to tell us, how did you create those systems like within your family so everything can kind of function, in a systematic way, in a smooth way, and be at the highest level?
I will start by saying it's not always smooth. It is
Hmm.
oftentimes manageable. The I grew up in a household that had chaos in it. It was a loving household, but there weren't really great systems for us. And so I was always an observer, and I would
Yeah.
sit and I would look at what my brother would do to get in trouble and how I could avoid that. We weren't allowed to play video games, but I wanted to play video games. So I had to think through a system that would allow me to do that, give my parents enough information so they knew I was safe, they knew where I was. They weren't going to come out and question it. And mom, dad, if you're listening, sorry. But you're not going to come question where Phillip is. We trust Phillip to be at the right spot and to be making the right decision. And then it allowed me some leeway. As I've gone forward in life, I think through the same things like what makes me happy? What did I enjoy from my upbringing that I want to recreate? My parents were hustlers. So they would find ways to make sure that we had income. They would find ways to make sure our family was taken care of. And it wouldn't always feel easy or like we knew where the next thing was coming from, but they were able to grind it out. As I've grown, I'm like, okay, I've got stable employment, which I'm very grateful for, but I also have that grinding personality inside of me, but I can't let it overtax my family. So how do I do it? And a perfect example of this is our sourdough business. Okay. And I do cook. I've had several cooking enterprise businesses that I've run alongside having a full-time job. But one of the things that I love to do is make food for my family and community. And I don't do it because I want the money. I do it because I want people's reactions. I want to feel a connection with other humans. My wife challenged me to make a loaf of sourdough a year and a half ago. I got some starter. I got deep in the process, started making it, and I was like, this is good. People were like, that's great. I'm like, it's not the best. So I just got obsessed. And I just kept making and making and making. And I'm putting loaves out of my front porch, just giving them out to neighbors. And they're like, you should sell these. And then my hustle brain came on. I was like, wait. Sell them from how much? Like $15 a piece. You're telling me you'll pay $15 for a loaf of bread? Yes. Okay, tried it. Selling 6 loaves of bread at a time, sold them all. This last weekend, well, actually, what's today? Tuesday. So on Sunday, we sold 52 orders of sourdough. Okay. That's scones, that's pizza, that's biscuits, cookies, bread, jalapeno cheddar, like all this stuff that if you're listening, I'm sorry, you can order it if you're hungry. But this cannot take away from my family time because I have 2 young sons. I have a wife. I love my family. I love being around them. I incorporated them into it. I pay both of my sons to help me out with sourdough. I teach them how to cook in the process. My wife runs the front of house part of it, which I think she enjoys. We're looking at how we can scale this into other areas. And it doesn't take up all the time that we have, and we still get to do fun stuff. Fast forward a little bit, my mom, who lives about 20 minutes from here, she also comes over and helps out. She will come over and help with cleanup, making, baking, all of these things. And it brings the community into it. So you lean into the people around you and how they can be a part of that circle. That's the only way you can do all of the things. If I tried to do it all alone, I wouldn't be anywhere. If I tried to do it all and say, yeah, I'm going to sacrifice my time with my kids so I can get further in the future, I would miss things. But the moment that it takes away from those things and it's impossible is the moment that I reevaluate and change. I think the flexibility mentally allows me to do it. The what it feeds inside of me, which is seeing people in my community be fed well and have a positive interaction, allows me to do it. And the fact that my family supports it. If they weren't going to support it, I would say, okay, we can't do it. I'm not going to force them into something. I may push
Right.
them past the comfort zone, but it's always their feedback determines what the action is. So I run all kinds of stuff, Jeremy. Like I look at myself sometimes at the end of the day and I'm like, you are nuts. But as long as the people around me love me, feel like we're getting enough quality time, and we're all able to be a part of something cool, it's worth doing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We're listening to a man that knows what should be prioritized, and so I can appreciate that. My last question to you, Philip, is the person that when we look at the background of any successful person, it's someone that poured into them. It's someone that helped them along the way, that gave them a not a handout, but a hand up. When you look back at your life, who is the person or the people that helped you along the way to get to where you are, that you really can say, hey, if it had not been for that particular person helping me, I wouldn't be where I am.
So that is such a deep question. I think first, I'd be remiss if I didn't honor my wife. She's fantastic. When we started dating, I mean, she came up to me and said, "Hey, you look like you're having fun dancing. Let's dance together," which doesn't really happen that often. That's how we met. And from then, it's always been this encouragement of, are we enjoying life and time together? And that's driven me. I was already, I think, when I met her, in a point of my life where I was feeling some success coming into my own. And like, she was pivotal in getting me to where I am now. If we look back before that, like I mentioned, there was a tumultuous environment that I grew up in. My sister and my brothers, like, we always had each other's backs, whether it was applying for college, proofreading essays, driving to college. I dropped off my little brother at George Mason on a whim. I finished driving a full day of bleach delivery. I got a call from him that he had to be at school 2 days from then. I was sitting in a lawn chair in my living room, college poor. Like, it was just a different vibe. And I was like, okay, Steven, I'll be there in a minute. Packed up, went over to his house. We got in a car, drove from Atlanta to George Mason in Virginia, right? Overnight drive, did it, dropped him off, flew back, got into the bleach truck again and drove. And I would do that for anybody in my family, specifically my siblings. They always had my back. But that's something that I think is expected. It's the people outside of your family who are also pivotal. This guy in my neighborhood, his name's Rob. We grew up together. He always had my back. My best friend, Mikey, his parents would help support me if I ever needed anything. And we met each other when we were like 11. In college, it was my friend Gimser, who just always was, we lived together. He was like, bro, where do we have to go? We once drove from Atlanta to Albuquerque because we had to. We found a car, we got in it, we drove straight out there. Like, to this day, if I call these people, we will take care of each other, and those people drive you. And I think you have friendships, you have family, and then the third layer is outside influences you wouldn't expect, right? My seventh grade
Yes.
French teacher, who, seventh and eighth grade French teacher, who at that time, I was you're going through puberty changes, you're going through all of this stuff. And I was feeling down on myself. I remember very clearly both of my siblings above me were high overachievers. They were getting awards and all this stuff. And I didn't really have that because I was in a different like zone. And Madame Weir, she called me out and said, he is a French student of the year. And this was at a time when I was at like my lowest. And she gave me that award. And I remember the most pride that I've ever felt because I was like, somebody saw something in me that I didn't think I was achieving or doing and made me feel like I could keep going. So those people poured into me. And now that I'm older, it's other leaders that I see who are in a place that I would like to achieve or reach for, like the gentleman Chris, like my friend Keyshawn. These are people who I see leading that I can emulate. And it's not necessarily they're solving problems for me now, but they are giving me a new goal. They are giving me another version of success that I can reach for and achieve. And it's continuing my drive.
Wow, powerful. Yeah, we all need someone to help us along the way, and I want to encourage everyone that's listening. Help that person that's coming behind you. You never know; it could change their life. So, as you can see, Philip has dropped some tremendous gems today concerning leadership, balance, and systems. And we certainly appreciate you, Philip, for joining our podcast. You have been one of my favorite guests, and I certainly appreciate it. Again, we thank everyone for joining this week's episode of Mastering Success. Make sure that you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.